I would like to introduce our presenters for agenda item number 1, which is the presentation of the FY 2024 Maricopa County recommended budget. So today, Cindy Geltz has joined us, as well as Kristen Prindle. So if I could please call you up, and we can get started. So great seeing all of you, Kristen. All right. Or Kirsten, sorry. I can never get the R and the I right. Dyslexic in the middle. So welcome. So I know that you guys have been working hard, and I'm sure that you've been showing the chiefs all the way through, but let's show the big bosses.
Yes, we'll get to it. Oops, thanks, Kirsten. Okay, so today Kirsten and I are going to present the 2024 recommended budget. Our budget was prepared with the focus on the priorities from Chairman Hickman to promote sustainable services and quality of life in Maricopa County. These priorities include funding to address homelessness, the opioid crisis, job training and career development, a continued recovery from the 2019 pandemic, initiatives to support growth in our economy. We also have investments in public safety. We're adding positions to both the Sheriff's Office and County Attorney's Office. There's support for public health and continued technology improvements to enhance efficiencies and promote transparency. The budget continues the trend of making investments which are one-time in nature but provide ongoing benefits. One such investment is the utilization of the balance of our proceeds from a bond issuance from last year that will be used to make additional payments towards our unfunded pension liabilities in the PSPRS and the corrections officers' retirement plans. What that will do for us is lower the operating costs in the future. In addition, the budget includes American Rescue Plan Act funds to support programs and address affordable housing, homelessness, community health, small business resilience. We include an ambitious capital plan providing the buildings and infrastructure necessary to meet the growing demands for services. Our county is a large county with a variety of mandates and demands on it, and in order to compile this sustainable, responsible plan, we needed guidance and collaboration. We are fortunate to have had such direction provided by Chairman Hickman. His leadership and direction are so appreciated. In addition, I'm grateful for Scott Isham, who was always available to us when we needed to have any hurdles addressed, and Michelle Montillo, who helped us through the process. The entire board and their chiefs dedicated an enormous amount of time as we developed this process. As Chairman Hickman mentioned, the chiefs and deputy chiefs met with us every week, and we went through every single above-base request for each department. Their varied points of view, experience, and knowledge provided us valuable insight as we crafted this plan. We appreciate the responsiveness and the collaboration that we received from all departments, the elected officials, the presiding judge, and justice of the peace. The only way for us to get to a sustainable, balanced budget is if we all work together. As we go through the presentation, you'll see details about this spending plan. However, this slide, it depicts a few highlights. First is that there's going to be a reduction to the property tax rate. It's going from $1.2473 to $1.2044 per $100 of net assessed value. In addition, both the flood control district and the library district will also have reduced property tax rates. The budget is structurally balanced. That means that ongoing revenues are at or above ongoing expenses, so we will not be creating any liabilities for the future. It contains 2 months of reserves in our major operating funds, as well as several of our special revenue funds. So we are prepared in case there's a shock to the economy. And we have funded all retirement contributions at the rates provided by the actuary. And again, as we mentioned, we're going to be setting some funding aside to address our unfunded liability. And finally, invest in capital and infrastructure for the county. Back in January, the board approved guidelines for us to develop the budget. Those included that we were to develop a sustainable budget that advances the county's mission and its strategic goals. It directed human resources to develop a targeted employee compensation strategy. It required all departments to submit their budgets within their baseline. And It prioritized the use of one-time monies, first to set our reserve levels, second to address any cost escalation for existing capital projects. Finally, we were able to evaluate all the increases that were in the budget for their impact on the expenditure limitation. I'm happy to report that the budget that's being presented to you today is in complete alignment with these guidelines. Each year, we develop the budget with a set of assumptions. First and foremost, as we talked about previously, is that the budget needs to be structurally balanced as to not impose a liability for the future. Second is that we use the pessimistic growth rate from our economists in order to forecast our major revenue sources of state share sales tax, vehicle license tax, and the jail excise tax. We included contingencies in the budget based on historical utilization, also for identified issues that we needed to fund during the year, and other revenue risks and unanticipated shocks from the economy. And as also provided for in the guidelines, we set aside 2 months of reserves in both our general and detention funds. Each year when we develop the budget, we consider a variety of economic indicators. A key indicator that we considered this year is the change to population. As has been reported, Maricopa County continues to outpace all other counties in the nation for growth in population. While population drives revenue growth, it also drives increased demands for services. We will see how those increased demands impact the budget as we go through the presentation. Okay, so for fiscal year 24, the recommended budget is $4 billion, $4,352,282,707. The largest area of funds that we will be expending next year is actually going to be from fund balances at $966 million, or 22.2%. The fund balance is used to fund one-time expenditures, so it's not used for our ongoing operations. So when we get to look at our capital plan or those investments in our pension, that's where you're going to see those funds coming from. The next largest source, and this is up from number 3 last year, is our state shared sales tax, which we are estimating at $926 million, or just over 21%. The other intergovernmental and grants moved down from the second spot to the third spot at $822 million. This is just under 19% of all the sources this fiscal year. So as we are working through the ARPA funding and other grant funding that came as a result of the COVID pandemic, we're seeing that shift between the intergovernmental revenues and all our other revenue sources. So because last year it was at the top, now it's moving downwards. Next is property taxes, penalties, and interest. This is $660 million, or 15%. What's interesting to note is that prior to the pandemic, this source was actually, it swapped year over year. Sometimes it was the first source of revenue, sometimes it was the second, between state shared sales tax and the property taxes. Now it's down at number 4, and it's been here for several years. And that is really due to a couple things. Obviously, we're spending one-time money for our enhancements to our capital plan and the ARPA funding, and then the board has taken action over the past several years to reduce the property tax rate. So that really is driving that revenue source down to that 4th position. The 5th and 6th largest categories are permits, patient revenues, fees and fines, and charges for services, and that's at 7%. And then our sales tax, which is actually our jail excise tax, and that is at 6.21%. The 7th largest source is our vehicle license tax, state share vehicle license tax, at $225 million, or about 5%. And the last 2 revenue sources are our highway user revenue funds at 3%, and miscellaneous interest and other revenues at $22.7 million, or just under 1%. Okay, so where do we use the funds? As has been the trend for many years, the largest portion of expenditures is going to be in the area of public safety, where we're about 50% of the expenses will hit, $2.2 billion. Our public safety budgets include budgets for the Sheriff's Office, County Attorney, the Superior Court, Adult and Juvenile Probation, the Clerk of the Court, Justice Courts, Constables, Public Defense, Planning and Development, Emergency Management, the Public Fiduciary, and ICGIS. The next largest category is Health, Welfare, and Sanitation. That is estimated to be at $1.2 billion next year, or 28% of the budget. The ARPA funding and other grant funds continue to comprise a lot of expenditures in this category. The departments in this area include correctional health, public health, human services, environmental services, air quality, the medical examiner, and animal care and control. In addition, this category includes large expenditures that the county is mandated to pay to the state of Arizona for healthcare costs. The next largest category is our general government category, which includes the assessor, the recorder, elections, the treasurer, the Star Call Center, county management, the board, clerk of the board, internal audit, and all the central service departments. The expenditures here are actually down from the prior year, about $30 million at $615 million, or 14% of the budget. And that is due to the completion, or the completion of the admin building revamp. Expenditures for highways and streets are the next largest categories, and their projects is 6% of the budget, or about $262 million. And rounding out the expenditures are culture and recreation for our parks department, and education, which is our county school superintendent's department. On this slide, we're illustrating, in essence, that large use of fund balance. So here we see of our expenditures in fiscal year 24, we have about $2.5 billion, almost $2.6 billion of operating expenditures and $1.8 billion of non-recurring expenditures. So you can see a large portion of our budget, almost 40%, is dedicated to non-recurring expenditures. Prior to the pandemic, that was about 20%. We saw it begin to creep up in fiscal year 21 with the influx of CARES that moved to 30%. Then in fiscal year 22 and 23, because of ARPA funding, it went to 35 and 46%. As we're depleting the ARPA funds, that will be coming back down. However, what's important to note is these one-time investments are really going to give us some payoff in the future to reduce some of our operating costs. As we talked about earlier, we are seeing large increases still in our state shared revenues. Our forecast reflects continued growth above the budgeted level for all of our major revenue sources in fiscal year 23, as you can see on the graph. For fiscal year 24, we're going to build on that, but due to the uncertainty of the sustainability of the growth, and similar to what we did in fiscal year 23, the budget continues to dedicate a portion of these revenues for one-time expenses rather than building our operating budget up to the level of this revenue source. Due to economic uncertainty and growing concerns with inflation, all of our revenues were budgeted by applying the pessimistic inflator to our 23 forecasted revenues. For the third consecutive year, the property tax rate will be cut. It will be going down from 1.2473 in fiscal year 23 to 1.2044 for fiscal year 24. In addition, the flood control district and the library district will also have reduced rates. So the combined county tax rate of all the county-controlled property taxes will be going down more than 5 cents, from 1.4570 to 1.4068 when you combine them. As you're aware, the Arizona Constitution establishes a limit on the amount of primary taxes that can be levied. The levy for fiscal year 24 is $659 million. This represents 73.9% of the maximum levy allowed. The maximum levy for the county in fiscal year 24 is $891.9 million. So we are about $232.8 million below the maximum amount that we could levy.
A quick question. I think I've asked this question every single time we do it. Where are the other counties with this? I know that there are several counties that are right at their expenditure limit. Where are we sitting in relation?
Mr. Chairman, I think I came prepared this year for this question. Let's see. Several counties are below their maximum levy, below what we are. So Greenlee, Pinal, Cochise, Gila, and Mojave. they're all below where we sit. And this is based on last fiscal year as well, because we don't know the levies yet for the fiscal year '24. So the balance of the counties, Pima, Santa Cruz, Yavapai, Navajo, Graham, Yuma, La Paz, Apache, and Coconino are all levying more than we are as a ratio to their maximum levy, with La Paz, Apache, and Coconino being at 100%.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes. Bill?
Thank you. Cindy, I want to ask you this because clearly, so this proposed budget has a lower property tax rate, but we'll get in these debates with some of our friends about what's your assessment? Is that an accurate statement to say that we'll be cutting people's property taxes if we approve this budget?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Gates, so this is a truth in taxation rate. So really what it's saying is, in aggregate, the properties that were taxed last fiscal year, again, in aggregate, their levy will be the same in fiscal year '24. And the only increase to our levy is really for any new property that was added to the rolls. However, for any individual taxpayer, it's going to vary, because it really is going to be based on how much their assessment went up relative to every other property owner. So in a generalized statement, yes, the property taxes should be at the level that they were last year, not an increase.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, and there's a limitation as well under state law on how much the evaluation can go up. Is that right?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Gates, yes. So for residential property, it cannot increase, the valuation cannot increase more than 5%.
Even though maybe the actual value has increased, it won't
correct.
as it relates to the assessed value.
That is correct.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman?
Jack?
Yeah, and this may be something you get to later, but looking at public safety being 50% of our budget and 40% of our revenue is non-recurring, how much of the public safety budget is non-recurring?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Sellers, when we get to the capital slide, I think our capital investment's about 40% of our capital projects, which is really that non-recurring funding. About 40% of that is associated with public safety. A lot of our other non-recurring expenditures are associated with the ARPA grants, so those are actually primarily in the healthcare area, the health, welfare, and sanitation.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so just as a reminder, though, in August, we're going to be updating this slide once we get all the tax rates from all the taxing jurisdictions in the county. But last fiscal year, the county's primary property tax was 11.44% of all the taxes levied in Maricopa County. Okay, so a little bit more about the American Rescue Plan Act funding. So as you may recall, this was signed back in March of 2021, and it provided the county with $871.2 million worth of funds. The county to date has allocated 100% of these funds based on actions that the board has taken to approve the spending. To date, we have spent about, and this is through March, sorry, we have spent $333.9 million, and we're forecasting to have spent about $377.1 million by the end of fiscal year '23. The remaining $494 million is included in the budget as one-time spending, and all funds must be obligated by the end of calendar '24 and spent by the end of calendar year '26. This pie chart illustrates how the funds for this ARPA funding have been appropriated. It's primarily used to respond to the negative impacts of the pandemic, including support to communities, households, small businesses, nonprofits, and the public sector to recover from the economic impacts. We're also using some funds to invest in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. The largest amounts allocated include $275.2 million for individuals and families, $224.8 million for the public health response, and $156.4 million for affordable housing. The departments that use this funding primarily are the Public Health Department and the county's Human Services Departments.
Mr. Chair.
Bill first.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Yeah, maybe we had the same question. I'm wondering on this, do we have any data? Do the feds have data as far as what the division of the expenditures among these different categories is on a national basis?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not aware. I will look into, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Gates. I can look into that and get back to you on how other counties have utilized their funding. If we can get information back.
Yeah, that'd be great.
We all submit reports.
And just to be clear, there was no requirement under ARPA that a certain percentage go into these different categories, right? It was just, it needed to be in one of these categories.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Gates, I'm not aware of any requirements.
Okay, thanks.
Jack.
Some of the discussions going on in Washington right now around the debt ceiling, they're talking about possible clawbacks to COVID funds. Do we see any of that impacting anything that we're doing here?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Sellers, I've not been apprised of any funding that's in danger as a result of that.
Okay.
So as you know, the county is required to make payments to the state of Arizona for certain health care costs. In fiscal year 24, that amount will total $335 million that will be paid to the state of Arizona for the Arizona Health Care Cost Containment System, the Arizona Long-Term Care System, and behavioral health services from the Arnold v. Sarn case. In addition, due to action taken in the legislative session, this most recent session, Maricopa County is now the only county in the state that is required to make payment for juvenile corrections. The total for that is expected to be $6.7 million in fiscal year 24. The total amount of the county's the general fund operating budget that it will be remitted to the state will be 18.2%. That is up from 17.7% in fiscal year 23. While the state budget has passed, the legislature is still officially in session. We were monitoring several bills along the way, some of which we are still keeping an eye on in case they come back. The first is a constable salary increase, which would add expenses to the county budget for next year. The second is a change to the valuation of business personal property. There's a proposal to change the valuation, which will result in the elimination of that tax, or tax on that property for our property taxes, which would negatively impact the county's property tax revenue. And finally, a bill that we were tracking that was one that would have been beneficial was a proposal to allow pay down of the unfunded pension liabilities for the elected official and probation officer retirement plans. That's unique because those plans are shared amongst multiple jurisdictions. That plan did not move forward. That piece of legislation did not move forward, but we are prepared to engage in a conversation about it if it were to come back. Thanks to Michelle, Danny, and Israel for keeping us up to date on everything that's happening down at the legislature so we can make sure that we can properly include any impacts in our budget each year. So before I turn it over to Kirsten, she's going to go through all the departmental budget changes. There are several changes that are countywide in nature that I wanted to just touch on. We're not going to show these on each slide. The first is the net change to our retirement contributions. We'll be putting another $7.7 million into our retirement costs next year. But I did want to note that, I don't know if you recall, but at the end of fiscal year 22, so after we had done the bond issuance during calendar year 22, we did make a payment into PSPRS, about $40 million. And while all the other retirement plans, their rates went up for fiscal year 24, the PSPRS rate actually went down 1%. So we only made a small contribution in fiscal year 22, so that's why we only a small reduction. I anticipate next year, once we see the impact of the amount that we put in fiscal year 23, which was $260 million between the PSPRS plan and the court plan, we should see a nice reduction to our retirement rates next year, provided that their investments hold. I guess I need to qualify that.
Mr. Chair.
Bill.
Just a quick question on that. Do we know what happened to the other counties during that same period?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Gates, I do not, but I can find out.
Okay. Safe to assume maybe they went up?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Gates, all the rest of our plans where we did not make a contribution went up.
Okay.
So I would say yes, that's a safe assumption.
Thank you.
In addition, we have telecom and radio charges countywide that are going up $2 million, impacting all budgets. And then our risk management charges are going up $5.5 million. So that would be impacting all the various county budgets. And now Kirsten's going to take over and talk about departments.
All right, so starting with constables, the constables general fund operating budget includes $15,000 to restore funding for a deputy constable and inactivate an administrative clerk in the warrants division. The constable's warrants division was also approved as a permanent program, but no additional funding was required. Constables also provided us with the cases served and attempted through Q1 of 2023, which we have included on this slide. The county school superintendent general fund operating budget is recommended at $3.2 million, and the detention fund operating budget is recommended at $325,000. One-time contingency of $150,000 is available for an IT infrastructure refresh. The Sheriff's Office General Fund operating budget includes additional funding of $5.9 million for overtime and overtime benefits, $2.6 million for staff and ongoing maintenance costs for the records management system community-aided dispatch system upgrade, $2.7 million for IT-related costs, $2.1 million for vehicles repairs, maintenance, and fuel, and $424,000 for 6 more deputy service aide positions. New one-time funding of $939,000 is for key technology upgrades and $670,000 for specialty vehicles and equipment. In the equipment services budget, there's also $3 million for new vehicles for patrol, the deputy service aides, and an aging vehicle replacement. The RMS CAD system upgrade is approved as a capital project for $7.9 million, and contingency of $3.7 million has been set aside for the fixed-wing airplane. The compliance budget includes $1 million for a contract increase for investigative services, $763,000 for 4 civilian investigator positions and contract civilian investigators, and $305,000 for IT upgrades for body-worn camera integration with evidence.com and text archiving. The equipment services budget includes $1.4 million for vehicles for the investigator positions, and the Axon body camera and taser refresh contract renewal is in contingency until the contract is finalized. This slide shows the total cost of Melendrez by category over the years. Through fiscal year 22, the county has spent $200.5 million. The estimated FY23 spending is $34.3 million, and the FY24 budget is $38.6 million, bringing the total to $273.4 million over the past 16 years. As shown in the upper left-hand corner of the chart, the top 3 costs are spending within the Sheriff's Office, monitor and related costs, and plaintiff attorney fees. The detention fund operating budget includes $3.5 million for body scanner staffing and maintenance, $1 million for the Shield jail management system ongoing maintenance costs, and $113,000 for jail controls, 2 vehicles for the Sheriff Information Management Services, and victims' rights units are in the equipment services budget for $100,000. The Clerk of the Superior Court General Fund operating budget includes $445,000 for a subsidy for positions in special revenue funds that can no longer be supported by the revenue received, and $179,000 for 2 courtroom services supervisor positions to improve the staff to supervisor ratio. The adult probation general fund operating budget is increasing due to reduced allocations to the fee fund as a result of declining revenues for $1.6 million and probation case management system positions for $455,000. Contingency has been set aside for the one-time implementation costs for the probation case management system of $3.1 million and licensing fee for service costs of $1.3 million. The detention fund operating budget is recommended at $50.1 million. Juvenile probation did not request any additional funding. The general fund operating budget is recommended at $26.4 million, and the detention fund operating budget is recommended at $40.1 million. The Superior Court General Fund operating budget includes $1.5 million for positions to support the probation case management system, probate and mental health, criminal court, and jury administration. There's also $835,000 to shift expenditures from the Fill the Gap Fund for court commissioners that can no longer be supported by the revenue received, $686,000 for the record system maintenance and support, $301,000 for security officer differential compensation, and $230,000 for security equipment maintenance. One-time funding is for a resource allocation consultant and social worker positions for the Cradles to Crayons program. Justice courts did not request any additional funding. The general fund operating budget is recommended at $26.3 million. The table on the slide compares justice courts data for fiscal year 22 and 23 over the same time period. Overall filings are up 20%. In emergency management, the contract renewal for the security guards resulted in additional funding of $100,000 needed for pay increases and a night supervisor. Correctional Health did not have any operating above baseline requests. They requested $3 million for their electronic health record system upgrade, which has been recommended as a capital project. The Assessor's General Fund operating budget includes additional funding of $463,000 for contract and license increases, $159,000 for a data architect position that will focus on data integration and management, $100,000 for aerial photography and oblique imagery, and $80,000 for customer experience development through digital first solutions. One-time funding of $646,000 is for the continuation of digital first solutions to automate processes for address validations, configure application programming interface platforms, automate applications, and deeds processing. The Elections General Fund operating budget includes additional funding of $519,000 to allocate personnel costs from the surcharge fund due to lower revenue, $464,000 for IT projects, and $262,000 for MPAs for election staff. The tabulation equipment budget is recommended at $2.5 million ongoing. One-time funding of $235,000 is recommended for IT projects. The primary and general election cycle budget of $10.1 million is for the presidential preference election and preparation costs for the primary election. Contingency has been set aside for the purchase of the ballot on demand printers and the licensing costs. The Recorder's Office General Fund budget also includes funding of $649,000 to allocate IT personnel from the surcharge fund due to lower revenue, plus additional funding of $295,000 for recording software, document management, and website refresh annual licensing, $260,000 for constituent services software projects, and $260,000 for AI software for voter registration and recording documents. One-time funding of $1 million is for the recorder website refresh, recording database application update, cubicle refresh, and server room decommission. The treasurer did not have any above baseline requests. The general fund operating budget is recommended at $9 million, and the taxpayer information fund budget totals $125,000. The county attorney general fund operating budget includes $1.5 million for 21 new positions. The 14 evidence specialist positions will review and redact body-worn camera footage. The 2 community affairs coordinator positions will allow MCAO to expand community outreach efforts, and the 5 civil positions will provide support for the increased public records requests and digital civil litigation needs. The Public Defense System General Fund operating budget includes additional funding of $7.4 million for the Adult Criminal Contract Council rate increase and $1.2 million for an investigator rate increase. One-time funding of $500,000 is for the office space expansion project in the Downtown Justice Center. The current e-procurement application agreement will expire in fiscal year '24. Additional operating funding of $50,000 is for the licensing costs, and one-time funding of $200,000 is for the implementation of the application upgrade. The Animal Care and Control General Fund operating budget remains flat at $945,000. The Shelter Fund continues to be subsidized by the General Fund to cover the revenue shortfall, with an increase of $1.4 million added to the transfer in the fiscal year '24 budget in order to cover additional costs related to positions, supply, and utility costs for the New East Valley Animal Shelter, personnel adjustments, and internal service charges. This brings the total subsidy to $7.8 million. The non-recurring budget is for moving and supply costs for the New East Shelter, mobile veterinary clinics, county rebranding, digitizing field notices, and allocations from ITC. The Environmental Services General Fund operating budget is increasing by $281,000 for vector control positions, lab supplies, vehicle fuel, and maintenance. The operating budget also includes $190,000 for repairs, maintenance, and equipment rental for erosion control at the landfills and repairs and maintenance at the transfer stations. The vector controls fogger replacement budget is increasing by $17,000 due to price increases for the equipment. One-time funding of $648,000 is for vector control equipment, lab space build-out, and a vehicle for one of the new positions. $408,000 is for erosion control for post-closure care at the Queen Creek and Rainbow Valley landfills, and asphalt repair and maintenance at the Cave Creek transfer station. The Parks and Recreation General Fund operating budget includes new funding of $446,000 to support the Maricopa Regional Trail ongoing repairs and maintenance costs. This includes 4 parks maintenance positions, trail major repairs, signage, supplies, tools, replacement gates, and box culverts. The Human Resources General Fund operating budget includes additional funding of $145,000 for the increase in the number of background checks, $15,000 for Biz Library training videos cost increase, $75,000 for recruitment efforts, including another county job fair, and $100,000 for the succession planning program. The system's operation budget is increasing by $647,000 for expected contract increases for Workday, ADP checks, time clocks, and Kano Smart testing software, as well as an FMLA tracking system to track departments' FMLA more efficiently. The OET General Fund operating budget includes $158,000 for expansion of cybersecurity tools due to increased demand for licensing, servers, software, and data streams. The major maintenance operating budget increase is for expansion of Okta for use by all county departments for $358,000 and licensing renewals for cybersecurity tools that were previously purchased as 3-year agreements using CARES funding for $1.1 million. New one-time funding is for the continuation of digital county initiatives, allocation of project manager's salary and benefits from the internal service funds, and the ServiceNow customer expansion. The ICGIS Detention Fund operating budget includes additional funding of $100,000 for professional service contract increases and hardware and software support. The Facilities Management General Fund operating budget is increasing by $4.9 million for 3 new positions to manage 430,000 square feet of space coming online in fiscal year '24, repairs and maintenance costs primarily due to contract rate increases and utility costs. The budget increase in the general fund was partially offset by a reallocation of $2 million from the detention fund operating and major maintenance budgets. One-time funding of $265,000 is for project management, environmental tracking, and energy cap software, repairs and maintenance costs for facilities going out of service, and an allocation from real estate. Go to the next. Oh, too far.
Okay. Wrong way. Can you get it to go back?
I think it's that one.
Yeah, I can't go back. Maybe I'm not supposed to talk about it. Okay, so, oh, one more front. Well, there we go. There we go. All right. So the last department that we're going to highlight is our department. It seems interesting that it just wouldn't show up there. I am grateful for your willingness to fund this request. We added mid-year a special projects manager to our team, Vicki Hansen, and she has just been invaluable helping us sort through some of the items that we're dealing with this year, and we are so happy to have her here, and I'm very grateful that you were amenable to funding this request for us. Mm-hmm. Okay, capital. Here. So our capital budget for fiscal year '24 is $417,152,161. Wow, that really zoomed forward. One more back. Or 2 more back.
2 more.
Yeah. Okay. Of that, 39% is for public safety related projects, primarily with the sheriff's office.
Just keep going.
I'll just talk. You have the slides in front of you.
Yes, I do. I'm looking at it. Okay.
Yeah. So the next largest area is our highways and streets capital budget. That's about 35% of the capital plan for next fiscal year. Then falling to third place is actually general government. So this slice went down from the prior year because of the completion of the admin building revamp. And then we have Parks and Recreation and Health, Welfare, and Sanitation as the last 2 pieces of the pie for our capital budget. And we're going to talk about all these projects in a little bit more detail. So for each of the slides that we're going to have for the capital project, if they're existing projects, you're going to see what we're going to spend in fiscal year '24 and the total project costs. And in addition, you'll see if any new funding was required for fiscal year '24 to be added to the project. So starting with parks, we have 14 parks projects that are currently underway that will continue into fiscal year '24. Several of them required additional funding in order to complete. They include the boundary fencing at an additional $350,000, host sites for $200,000, park stay use for Hacienda Usury and White Tanks, that totals $390,000, and then an additional $13.8 million for the Vulture Mountain project for construction. That would be construction of day-use facility, parking areas, trailheads, trails, restrooms, entry stations, ramadas, and playgrounds.
I hit it. It may go.
Okay, all right. So there are 3 new parks projects. They total $1.6 million. It is for educational building improvements, the Joe Foss shooting range, and a parks master plan. Moving on to facilities, similar to the parks projects.
Cindy, one second. I just wanted to, for those watching at home, this budget has been important, and a lot of what you see happens in this building. But what I had a chance to be able to go out and attend the Parks Board meeting when they were going over the budget and the recommendations. And they wanted to just give their thanks to this board about how important we feel the parks is. We don't see it all the time, but our residents get a chance to go out there on weekends and spend time with their families, and it's really important that I think we just call attention in the budget process just how important it is for those board memberships and those appointments that we all make to specific boards, because they really get to dig into this and make us feel good about apportioning money to basically some unsung areas of county business. So I just thought I should call it out to you guys and say how much we might hear it from our individual appointed members, but as a board, they were very appreciative this year's budget cycle to take a look at this and understand our strategic plan and how to put it forward for the rest and relaxation with our residents and how they can spend family time there in those parks. So just thought our board should know that right now. Okay, Cindy.
So moving on to the facilities projects, the 24 projects that are continuing from fiscal year 23, 6 of them are going to require additional funding. The first one is the Early Childhood Center for the employees. It's $224,000 additional funding is needed there. The judicial branch fencing project requires another $500,000. For the Sheriff's Office, the security surveillance project requires an additional $26.2 million. Last year, we only funded the design, so this year, really, the funding is being set aside to implement that project. And 2 substations, both the Mesa substation and, on the next page, the Surprise substation, they will require additional funds to complete. And then the Southeast Juvenile Facility remodel will require an additional $3.7 million to get it to completion. We have 6 new facilities projects being added to the CIP in fiscal year 24, the largest of which is $179.5 million for downtown office and election facility. In addition, there's a project for office space, projects at the Durango campus for electrical infrastructure, and then Northwest drainage project. The Star Call Center relocation project is also slated for fiscal year 24, and then we're adding to the CIP the 9th floor of the Central Court building remodels. I think we have in reserve for future years funding for the 8th and the 6th floor. Okay. So technology, we have no new countywide technology projects, but there are 11 projects that are continuing from the prior year. The only one that has additional funding associated with it is about $2.1 million for the Enterprise Resource Planning System. That's our financial system. This is part of an upgrade process that we have ongoing. So while it is in addition to this project cost, we're really shifting funds, transferring funds from our operating budget to the project in order to be able to complete that. So no new resources were needed for that. There are 2 department-specific new projects, though, for fiscal year 24. As Kirsten mentioned, we have the CAD RMS system, the computer-aided dispatch system for MCSO at $7.9 million, and the Correctional Health Services electronic medical records or electronic health record system for $3 million. Even with our robust capital plan, we still have about been tagged with a $1.5 billion price tag for several unfunded projects that are known but not yet funded or do not yet have funding set aside in reserves. And they're all listed here on this slide. Okay, so FTEs. So as you can see, the number of FTEs actually is going up again in fiscal year 24. We're going to 15,079. So it's about a little bit more than 250 more than what was in last year's approved budget. Some of these positions were actually added during fiscal year 24, so they're not all new to the budget cycle. Some have been added, added during fiscal year 23. So they're not all new to the budget cycle, but some of them are. The largest areas, and I think Kirsten talked through most of these, but we have the Sheriff's Office. So they're having an increase of 73 overall net new positions between the fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24 budget. 46 of those are those security officers to run the body scanners at the jails. We have additional civilian investigators, both added in fiscal year 23, as well as several new for fiscal year 24 and IT positions. The Transportation Department added 52 positions since last year. It'll be 41 of which are roadway technicians for cross-training and standardized traffic controls. The Superior Court's year-over-year change from the budget perspective is 48 positions. About half of those actually are in the IT area. And those are the largest areas of increase between the 2 years.
Before we move that slide, thank you for putting this slide in, because I've asked questions, versus where we were in 2008 versus where we are now. And I talk a lot about economies of scale, especially when other people talk about the growth of government and the services provided to an ever-expanding population. And that's just, I know it's just rudimentary math, but if you take a look at where we were with the number of people working here in 2009 with a smaller population versus where we're at right now, the significance of that really shows economies of scale when it comes to workforce. It also shows just how much investment this county has made in technology, new processes and procedures in order to provide, a great service level to our community, to continue to get projects built, to continue to offer services to our county residents. So it's gone from 3.84 to 3.17 workers to support the growth of the county. So I think that this is a very important slide for the public to see when we're asked about what we do in a job. So my thanks to our county manager and our former county managers for putting us on this path. And we just have a lot of motivated people that probably are doing a lot more with having fewer people to do it with. And I appreciate the county employees to continue to keep getting this done. So, sorry, I keep taking you off your game, but this was an important one for me to show the board.
Okay. So to summarize, the budget aligns with the board's guidelines. We set the tax rate at the truth in taxation rate. The combined rate is going down about 5 cents between the county, the flood control, and the library district. It maintains structural balance in our major funds. It has 2 months worth of reserves set aside, and all our retirement increases are, the actuarial rates are funded, and we are also paying down some additional unfunded liability in our public safety and correction officers' retirement plans, and we are making large investments into our capital and infrastructure in order to maintain services and have buildings and technology available to provide services. With the high interest rates and inflation, it is anticipated that consumer and business spending will slow down. That will impact our major revenue streams. We have been very conservative by applying the pessimistic growth to our major revenues and utilizing even a portion of these one-time revenues, as we did in fiscal year 23, to set aside for future one-time expenses rather than grow our operating budget. Paying down our unfunded liabilities will reduce our operating expenses in the future, and we expect to see this play out starting in fiscal year '23. This strategy will position us to weather whatever shocks come our way, and with our conservative planning, it has been valuable in the past, and we would appreciate continuing these practices in the future, so we are ready to tackle any downturn that we might face. So, whoops. What's left? So today, we are hopeful that you will approve the tentative budget for fiscal year '24. After that, we will do our required postings and be back here on June 26th for final budget adoption. And then the third Monday in August, August 21st, will be the property tax levy and property tax rate. Okay, so before concluding, I would like to acknowledge the guidance and support from Jen, our new county manager. She hit the ground running within a couple of days of being the county manager. We were meeting, going over everything that we did with every chief, or all the chiefs' meetings, and every above-base request that we had done since January. She, in a matter of hours, she took it all in. I also appreciate the guidance we had from former county manager Joy Rich, and the guidance I've received for now more than 20 years from Leanne Bone. She's been my supervisor off and on since I joined the county. The insight of these three individuals was instrumental in us being able to develop this budget. I also want to express my gratitude to Kirsten and baby girl Prindle, who stuck with us this whole time and did not leave us at the end here. Kirsten really takes pride and ownership in the budget process, and you can tell that she's very well versed in everything budget, and everything runs smoothly because of her. And I also want to recognize how she leads a wonderful team. They are all very supportive of her and really do a terrific job working with the departments so they can understand their needs to be able to put through this recommendation to you. So with that, we are concluded with the county portion of this presentation and are available for questions.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments on this proposal or any other items from the budget presentation?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Gallardo.
All right, I've been dog-earing these pages as we were going through it. So there's a few, most of it is just clarification. Great job, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the budget that has been presented to us. But just real quickly, well, I'll start with this one first. This is simple. Going back to page 33, this is the election one. You made a comment about, and you may have stated the number. I just don't, my mind doesn't work that fast in the morning. The presidential preference election, is that included in the primary and general election cycle budget, or is that a separate number? And what is that number?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Gallardo, yes, the presidential preference election is included in that 10.1 million number, and it is $7.8 million of that 10.1 million.
7.8 to conduct a presidential preference election?
Yes, that is correct.
And what's the reimbursements that we get from the state? I know it's statutorily, I thought.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Gallardo, it's $1.25 per voter, so the revenue that is budgeted is about $2.1 million.
Did we get reimbursed in the last election?
Yes, we
We did. And I'm assuming we will, it's just a lot of money for it. An election that doesn't include independents, and a third of our registered voters are not included. I've always been an advocate to open up the presidential preference election. I know that's kind of a touchy issue with our party folks, but nonetheless, that's a lot of money for a presidential preference election. So just want to note that, and then the reimbursement is not even close to the full reimbursement. But nonetheless, that's a legislative issue, which I hope one day they address. I want to go right back to, and just again, clarification, page 3, the truth in taxation rate. What was the rate that it's coming down to? What's that dollar amount, I guess?
The rate that it's, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Gallardo, the truth in taxation rate is the rate that we will be setting the property tax. It's $1.2044 per 100 assessed value.
$1.2044.
2044.
What was it last year?
Oh,
what do we
what was the truth in taxation rate last year?
Yeah.
I will have to get back to you on that.
That's fine. You can get back to me. That was just more clarification. And in terms of the overall budget, I get it. It could be a wash for some. But nonetheless, what would be, I guess, the overall reduction within our budget if we reduce it? I'm okay with some, these types of measures. I've always said as long as our bills are paid and the county's fully funded, I'm okay with it.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Gallardo, the overall county budget, how much is it going down?
Yeah.
It's going down $114 million.
114 million?
Yes, primarily in the area of non-recurring spending.
In what?
In the area of non-recurring spending, so non-recurring expenditures, one-time expenditures year over year are declining $279 million. Operational costs are increased $164 million.
Okay. Very good. Again, just clarification. Oh, there was something else here that caught my eye. Oh, let's page 7. Just again, we've always knew in the back of our head there will be a day, and Leanne and I have had this conversations many times, a day because the ARPA dollars that are being used right now to help families, to help not only families, programs. I mean, it's being used on a lot of areas. I know even I think the whole broadband situation being paid for by ARPA. There's a lot, the ARPA, we knew there was a day that's going to come down. And it's, correct me if I'm wrong, the intergovernmental and grant, the 18.89%, that's where the ARPA dollars are at this point, right? I guess, where are we at the ARPAs? Maybe that's a whole nother discussion on when is that going to all sunset. I know it's coming close. I believe almost all of our money has already been allocated into certain areas. But at what point does that curtain just close?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Gallardo, we expect to have spent by the end of this year $377 million. So we have about $494 million remaining. We have that program to be spent next fiscal year. I'm going to guess it won't all get spent next year's fiscal year, and some will need to be carried forward. We have to have it all allocated by 2024 and all spent by 2026. And what we did in fiscal year's 23's budget is that we set aside funding on the general fund operating side in a contingency for what we're calling the ARPA cliff. We carried forward that funding in our fiscal year 24 budget, so we still have that funding available for certain areas of service that would need to continue once the ARPA funding went away.
And I guess, I don't need to know now, but I'd be curious to know that when we hit that ARPA cliff, I like that term because that's truly what it is. What will that percentage be? When we start talking about our grants, I know it changes. There's a lot moving every year, I get it. But what average would that be? Pre-COVID, what was, we would averagely, I don't even know that's a word, but on an average, what would the state or the county get when it comes to grant and intergovernmental? Because that's part of our source funds. I'd be curious.
Supervisor Gallardo, yes, and Chairman Heckman, yes. We can get that information for you, but in the past, the top revenue sources were sales and property tax, and they would flip-flop every year, then fund balance, then intergovernmental. Yeah. So it used to be number 4. So it's, it made its way up last year, and now it's inching its way back down as we deplete.
It'll go back to the number 4 spot that it should be. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get it. All right, and just, again, clarification, page 8. I thought I heard right. On the public safety portion, which is, I mean, it's crazy how much money we spend in public safety. I get it, though. I mean, it's like, wow, how can we, and I know everyone from our sheriff's office to our courts and our justice courts, everyone's working to try to reduce that in terms of public safety, 50% of our budget going to public safety. Did I hear right? Planning development is included in the public safety portion, is that correct?
Chairman Hickman, Supervisor Gallardo, yes, planning and development is part of the public safety grouping of departments.
Okay. Is that normal? I don't know. It just,
Is that because of zoning and,
Is that what it
and
is?
infrastructure and water and?
Yeah, and Chairman Hickman, Supervisor Gardo, the source of planning and development is from public health and safety laws. That's how zoning was created, and also building safety to help separate uses that might be harmful to each other, and then also building safety, make sure the building doesn't fall down.
Makes sense. I learn something new every day. It just caught me. I mean, I think of, we think, public safety, you think of the courts, you think of the sheriff, all our different departments.
And then code enforcement is also.
Oh, there you go. All right. Okay, I'm learning. The only other, let me look at my dog. The only other page goes right into the justice courts, and it just drives, I wish I had a crystal ball. I wish I had answers. I mean, this county, this board has made the issue of housing and homelessness really a priority. We really have, and we shows in our investments in ARPA funding. I don't even know, Leanne, what's the number we used for just in homelessness? Was it like 55? Over 100 million we put in just trying to address folks that live right out here, in not only in the zone, but all over. In every one of our districts, homelessness is an issue. And it seems like it just gets worse. We spent over $100 million, it seems like it gets worse. I wish I knew how to address this issue, and how do you reduce the number of folks that are on our streets. I just don't have answers. I look at the justice courts, an increase of 20%. What is, I guess, in past, and maybe there's something to get back with you, 20% seems like a large increase. It really is. I mean, I get it. We're growing by leaps and bounds, and come growth comes situations like this. But again, it goes back to what's contributing to that. A lot of it is evictions. ARPA money's going away. How does this work? How do we, if we're spending millions of dollars in trying to keep folks in their home, yet the eviction rate continues to skyrocket, what happens when the ARPA money goes? We have a number of folks that are out on the street right now. Does that number go up? The ARPA money's gone. So now, how are we addressing this issue of housing and homelessness? So those are the things that stick in my mind. I'd be curious to know, maybe this is a conversation I have with the justice courts in terms of their data and their info. It just seems, that's a lot. A 20% increase is a lot. And you have, 49% of the cases are evictions, people being thrown out of their homes. Home prices aren't going down, rental fees, or that ain't coming down anytime soon. So those are the things that kind of stick in my mind as we address the budget. Again, we can't solve all the issues, but housing and homelessness continues to be tops. I've always said this when folks would ask me, what am I working on at the county? This is prior to COVID. I always said housing was the #1 issue in Maricopa County. It really was. And since COVID, it has tripled, quadrupled, and the need for affordable housing, the need for homelessness is just quadrupled as well. We spent over $100 million, and it's gone worse. So those are the things I think about when I address this budget. With that, Mr. Chairman, those are all the questions I have. Thank you, ladies. Great job. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the budget.
As per the usual, Steve, I swear you have the most fiscal conservative viewpoints when we're talking about a budget.
I need a red tie, brother. I need a red tie.
You amaze me on some of that. And you're also talking about, after the pandemic, the massive amount of growth rate, that is occurring here, and residents coming and chasing better and better jobs that are coming here. So, and that creates a higher rent problem. So I appreciate your questions on that, because we've probably looked at this kind of spending for 2 years, and with the ARPA money, like what can we do with this money that will help long term, not just short term? but where do we need to put the money at that the money lasts past? It's not just liquid money, but it's the processes and the infrastructure that we're doing right now. I know I look at Tempe and our partnership with them with a 10-year cycle of what does that place look like in 10 years, and how do we get that place back into the economy and to help people. So anyway.
Mr. Chairman, no, I don't. I'm supportive of the budget, and
I'm sure.
I think it's well balanced, and it looks like all our constitutional officers are okay with it. I'm assuming none of them have called me. That's the measuring stick.
Yeah.
So I'm very supportive of the budget.
Well, they've called me, Steve, but
They haven't called me, so I'm like,
well, we've tried to work. We've tried to work within it.
All right.
So, other questions or comments? Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would echo all of Supervisor Gallardo's comments. Congratulations. Thank you for all the hard work. Having been chair a couple times in the past, I know that this is such an important part of the role, but thank you. I think this is very fiscally responsible, and thrilled to see tax relief to our residents for the third year in a row. That's really remarkable. So thank you, and it's a big testament to Cindy and Kirsten. This is just, again, incredible work that you guys do. Your knowledge of this budget and making it all work, just very, very impressive. Just a couple things. One thing on what Supervisor Gallardo had said about the justice courts. I think, my sense as part of the increase in these cases is just as folks get back into the court system with COVID, moving on, but also for the justice courts to have this kind of an increase and not ask for increase in the number of cases and not ask for a increase in the budget speaks to how I think they're using technology. They have gone remote. I think it's a bit of an untold story about the extent to which, so many of these hearings are now remote. So not only are they saving taxpayer dollars, but they're also saving the dollars that folks not having to come into court, things like that, but still dispensing justice. So I think it's just an incredible job that they're doing there. And then also just a clarification, Mr. Chair, on the $100 million, is that in for homelessness? Is that in this budget that we're talking about, fiscal year 24? I'd be interested in what that number is, both between operating costs and the one-time expenditures.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Gates, we can get you the breakdown of the amount of that $100 million that's yet to be spent in fiscal year 24 and forward.
Great. Again, just wonderful job. The rest of my questions I kind of asked as we were going in real time. So I'm very supportive as well to be able to address the needs of this growing county, to provide relief to our taxpayers is really job well done by everybody involved. Thank you.
You're welcome, Bill. Thank you. Tom?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Yes, I just want to build on those words that we heard. I just want to thank you and your team. Excellent work, excellent presentation. I'm continuously impressed. And then just proud overall of the county, proud of this board, and proud of everyone that works here, of our sound fiscal stewardship, of our sound financial footing, how we're able to cut property tax rates, but at the same time provide funding for essential services, especially for public safety. So I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of you, and please tell your team we said thank you.
Great. Thank you, Tom. Jack?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll just echo what everyone else has said, but I also just want to comment that the last several years, budgeting has been such a complicated process, and I have been so impressed with the way you've worked through all of this. It really is a testament to what a great operation and a great county we have, so thank you.
Well, before we move on to item 2, again, my thanks. I think every time you came in to talk to us, I gave thanks to you guys and your staff and Leanne. Look at how we are talking about this budget now and going line by line. By the way, I ask this question all the time too. Juanita, how many people are actually watching this right now?
Chairman, let me find out for you.
Okay. It just boggles my mind, even when there's a call out to the public to, hey, make sure and participate and see where your tax dollars are going, just how many people. My assumption at this point is this county does this job very well. We're not answering for it very often in the paper or in the media because we just work this stuff all year long and work hard at it. You're holding off on having that baby so you could get to this point. So thank you for that. I've talked about that over and over again, like, hey, don't stick around too long. But I guess a question to our new county manager. You've been with the county a long time, and now you're in this spot. And you've been, of course, in the departments and watch us all the way to this point. Is there something that you spot that we could do different, maybe? Is there something that we could do better as we set this budget up? We have the ability because as colleagues, we have chiefs that attend a lot of meetings for us, but we also attend some meetings to get to this point that we can feel good about this budget. Is there some things from the outside looking in, and now that you're inside, what can we tell our tax-paying citizens that they need to know through this process?
It's a good question, Chairman. And been with the county almost 20 years, and I've always been impressed by how fiscally conservative the county has been. And I would say in the last, probably 10 years, as you can see, even from, as you pointed out in the FTE chart, how we've become more efficient and have done more with the same or even fewer resources, as Cindy pointed out. And I think that's a testament to, we have a really talented budget group. Cindy, I just want to say thank you, and Kirsten and our future employee, baby Brindle. But I would say we should keep on doing what's working, and it is working well from the departments on down. They understand about how to be the most efficient and lean operation we can, but deliver the services, as Supervisor Gardo mentioned, that the community needs. So I think we've been doing a tremendous job, and I would say we keep on keeping on.
Awesome. Well, the two items that pop in my head when we're forming up a budget is something number one, I've worked on or tried my best to work on over all these years is the matter of cost shifts and outright cost sweeps. And I was disheartened once again that one of the cost shifts that remain is this county continues to pay a disproportionate share of juvenile corrections. And this is an area we have no guidance. Or look how we're trying to get efficient. Look how we try to provide service. Paying for juvenile corrections for the state when no other county now pays for it. Other than I think that's almost a travesty that the legislature keeps giving us. If they're going to have us pay for that, we should be able to have a little bit of vision on how to maybe do things better there. And it just doesn't happen. We just write a check at the end of the year. So again, I've failed in abating a cost shift that's been there since I've been here. We've been able to get some vision on that before, but this one just doesn't ever seem to end. And if they're going to give us the bill, we should have the ability to run that department maybe better instead of just paying for this. And then you brought up, Steve, even on your side, you brought up the presidential preference election. How many times have I talked about this? We have a legislature or people in the legislature that tell us that we don't run elections well. And then on elections that we do run, and I think we run them exceedingly well, we have to spend this much money on something directed to us by the legislature. And they don't want to tell us, hey, you're doing it so bad, we'll take that back over. Okay, so all we do is we get foisted with a bill that we pay to let county citizens vote in a presidential preference election. It's not a primary, it's a preference election. So once again, this is, every year this comes up, I say the same thing. We need to take a look at this. We need to have the legislature take a look at this, and if they don't feel that we run elections very well, they need to do something about that. They need to talk to the parties, and they need to figure that one out, other than, again, us offering the best that we can do on an election that's, again, you've mentioned independence. This is taxation without representation. They don't get to participate in this election, but their taxpayer dollars go to it. So we really do need to take a look at that. I don't know if it's this year, succeeding years, whatever, but it continues to happen. And all we do is get criticized for it. So with that, again, thank you guys for working so hard throughout the whole year to bring us to this point. We'll move on to item number 2, which is an action item, the adoption of the Maricopa County FY 2024 tentative budget. And before I ask for a motion, thank you, Juanita. There are 40 people watching the webinar today on YouTube with $4 billion that we're talking about today. So appreciate it. Thanks for letting me know. I will now ask, is there a motion for item number 2 to adopt the FY 2024 Maricopa County tentative budget?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Vice Chair.
I move that we approve the fiscal year 2024 Maricopa County tentative budget in the amount of $4,352,282,707 by total appropriation for each department, fund, and appropriation unit group listed in the attached schedules. Also, adopt the 5-year capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2024 through 2028 and approve the attached executive summary.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Steve. I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We will now move to agenda item number 3 regarding setting public hearings and a special meeting regarding the Maricopa County 2024 budget. Is there a motion for item number 3?
Mr. Chairman.
Jack.
I move that we set the public hearing on the budget and a special meeting for June 26, 2023 at the time and location outlined in the agenda, and give notice that tax levies and tax rates will be set by this board Monday, August 21st, 2023.
Great. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We will now recess as the Board of Supervisors and convene as the Improvement District Board of Directors. The documents regarding these districts are included in the backup materials, where each district is listed along with the associated district assessment or estimated tax rate. So under item number 4, the adoption of the FY 2024 tentative budget, and number 5, set public hearing and special meeting. So is there a motion for items 4 and 5?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Vice Chairman.
I move that we approve the fiscal year 2024 tentative budgets for all of these special districts and improvement districts as described in the agenda and per the budget request as listed on the attachment, and that we set the public hearing on the budgets along with a special meeting for June 26, 2023 as outlined and described in the agenda.
Thank you, Jack. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bill. I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We will now adjourn as the Improvement District Board of Directors and convene as the Flood Control District Board of Directors to consider the tentative budget and set hearing dates for the adoption of the general budget. Cindy Gels is here for a presentation of the Flood Control District budget.
This is going to be quick. The overall expenditures for the Flood Control District for fiscal year 24, $124 million. And the tax rate proposed is the truth in taxation rate, so it will drop from 15.92 cents to 15.36 cents with a levy of $77.5 million. The CIP for the flood control district is $77.6 million, and the total of the 5-year CIP is $557 million.
Great, thank you, Cindy. Thanks for the presentation. Are there any questions? No questions. Okay. So I'm asking for a motion, I believe, on item number 6.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Jack.
I move that we approve the fiscal year 2024 flood control district tentative budget in the amount of $126,307,391 for a total appropriation for each fund and appropriation unit group of the flood control district, and that we set the public hearing on budget and a special meeting for June 26, 2023, as outlined and described in the agenda for the flood control district.
Great, thank you. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Steve. I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Did I get a little bit in front of myself? Is it 7 and 8?
Yes,
We
that
just
is
do
for
that
7 and
motion?
8.
Great, thank you. I didn't call it out, sorry. It's a little bit hard. We will now adjourn as the Flood Control District Board of Directors and convene as the Library District Board of Directors to consider the tentative budget and set hearing dates for the adoption of the final budget. So with the Library District, Cindy.
Okay. The library district budget for fiscal year '24 is just under $36 million. The proposed tax rate is going from 5.05 cents to 4.88 cents per hundred of a net assessed value for a levy of $26.7 million.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, the Board of Directors will now consider agenda items 10 and 11, which includes the adoption of the Library District tentative budget and the hearings related to final adoption of the budget. Is there a motion for items 10 and 11?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the fiscal year 2024 Library District tentative budget in the amount of $35,742,699 by total appropriation for each fund and appropriation unit group of the Library District, and that we set the public hearing on the budget and a special meeting for June 26, 2023, as outlined and described in the agenda for the Library District.
Great, thank you, Jack. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bill. I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We'll now adjourn as the Library District Board of Directors and convene as the Stadium District Board of Directors to consider the tentative budget and set hearing dates for the adoption of the final budget. Ms. Getz.
Okay, so the overall budget proposed for the Stadium District is $7.5 million. $7.25 million of that is for the car rental surcharge revenue that we received to be transferred over to the Arizona Sports and Tourism Authority. The remaining $250,000 is for the Stadium District audit cost and central service costs.
Great, thank you for the presentation. Are there any questions? Seeing none, the Board of Directors will now consider agenda items 13 and 14, which includes the adoption of the Stadium District tentative budget and the hearings related to final adoption of the budget. Is there a motion for items 13 and 14?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the fiscal year 2024 Stadium District tentative budget in the amount of $7,500,000 by total appropriation for each fund and appropriation unit group of the Stadium District, and that we set the public hearing on the budget and a special meeting for June 26, 2023, as outlined and described in the agenda for the Stadium District.
Great, thank you, Jack. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tom. I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.